Hi, welcome back. This is the Mission Mediation Podcast. I'm Jonathan. I'm the founder and partner at the Pact. Welcome back to the season two. I'm with a very dear friend today, Charlie LaFond, who's joining us, and I'm going to say hi to him very soon. Charlie, how are you doing? How's it going in Vienna?
Doing very well, thank you. We just had a lot of snow, so everything's covered in white right now. So it's quite beautiful,
Yeah,
picturesque. It's almost like Christmas all over again.
it's Christmas. It's come too late, though. It's
Yeah,
February.
a little bit too late.
We were just reminiscing that we met 10 years ago, Charlie, in Vienna at CDRC Vienna, which is an international mediation competition. And then you were so generous to fly into India, and you were with us in Goa when we inaugurated the international mediation competition in Goa. And you've never said no to anything I've requested for you. So once again, thank you so much for joining us on the Mission Mediation Podcast. This is episode two, season two. If you have not caught up on season one of the Mission Mediation Podcast, you can see all episodes on our YouTube channel. All you got to do is search for Mission Mediation by Pact, and you should find all the episodes there. So look into Mission Mediation by Pact, subscribe to the channel, and you'll get a daily, not a daily, sorry, you'll get a fortnightly update every time there's a new episode popping in. We don't trouble you that much, once in a fortnight. You can also follow us on LinkedIn. That gives you daily updates, so you can join us live on these episodes and on this podcast. If we're trying to bring in a fresh take to very, very crucial topics in the negotiation and mediation space. So follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you'll be up to date with everything that Pact's up to in the space of conflict resolution. Charlie, how do you think that was? Was that a good pitch? Was that a good negotiation pitch?
Yeah, that was.
Do you think
Gotta go
think I did
there.
well?
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So for those of us who are joining live, say hello. Tell us where you're joining us from on LinkedIn and YouTube. This is the Mission Mediation Podcast. Say hello, and we'll try and rope you in, and maybe you might have some questions or comments for Charlie, and we'll try and bring you in that as well. Charlie LaFond doesn't need an introduction, but of course, for those of you who don't know him yet, you should be following him on LinkedIn. But he is, of course, the owner of LaFond Training. Before, you were also involved with Into Results. That was another brand that Charlie worked with and was, of course, directing at that time as well. We spent fond memories in India of, I think, around 6 or 7 years ago. We were in Mumbai and then also in Delhi. And we did some very intense negotiation workshops with a bunch of law students. We've got some really fond memories of that. But Charlie, you're also an adjunct professor at Webster University in Vienna, where you teach, once again, negotiation skills. And today, the focus is on negotiation. We are getting into a very, very intense topic, but at the same time, a topic that a lot of people think they already know a lot about, right? People like talking about power dynamics in the conflict resolution space, power dynamics in the negotiation space. So without further ado, I'm going to throw this straight to you. When you hear the term power dynamics or disarming power dynamics in negotiation, what comes to your mind, and what are you thinking?
Well, I think that here, thank you very much for that question, Jonathan. And once again, I'd also like to say thank you for hosting me here on this podcast today. I appreciate it very, very much. Power dynamics and disarming power dynamics. We have this feeling sometimes that power is something that we can either have or not have. And that's not generally the case. Everyone has got a certain amount of power. It's a matter here of the intentional process of trying to manage that power more effectively. And when we talk about disarming power, we're talking about here trying to not necessarily remove power itself. That's not possible to do. People have power. But the question is, what is the distortion that that power creates in the negotiation? How can we remove that distortion a little bit? When I talk about distortion, I'm talking about here giving people the ability to think clearly. Sometimes using pressure tactics so that people can't think clearly. That's distorting the power a little bit. And you, as a negotiator, need to be able to recognize that and deal with it more effectively. And so that's where the whole concept of power is something that we are generally relatively scared of. And what we need to do is we need to recognize that power is indeed our ally and that we can deal with that, even if the other party has more power than we do. How do we do that, though? And that's what I'd like to get into a little bit more during the course of this podcast. I can't put that whole answer just in one little quick nutshell here. But the idea is basically that we want to move from a positional battle into a more of a collaborative battle. And I think that's important for us to recognize here, that we need to take that power. We need to, when people try to intimidate us, when there's certain uncertainty, or when there's a status clash between the powers, this emotional imbalance, that we need to try to deal with a little bit more effectively. Now, negotiation is, of course, not necessarily something that can be worked out rationally. There's a lot of rational aspect involved in it. And I like to say as well to my students here that we don't necessarily negotiate with our head, with our brain. We negotiate with our gut. And it's our gut that controls us much, much more than a lot of us recognize. And that's where a lot of the power resides that we need to deal with. So dealing with the psychological aspects is a very, very important aspect. We need to learn to separate the person from the power as well. Just as we say separate the person from the problem, we also need to learn to separate the person from the power so that we don't mix up the hierarchy with motives. And that's something that we need to be aware of as well. And there's a lot of different ways that we can look at that in more detail. And I'd like to delve into that a little bit more during the course of this podcast. Another area.
If I can just come in there, because Charlie, I find this very interesting. You speak about, we don't necessarily negotiate rationally all the time. We're not always using a rational brain while negotiating, as you say there. But you're also speaking about most of the times we're negotiating with our gut and not our mind. But in the practical world, and I'm really going to go really, be very naive with this. What is the difference between what your mind's telling you and what your gut's telling you? Like in any kind of a situation, it could be a simple situation about even like, do I take up this job or don't take up this job? A lot of people are stuck between in decision making, especially, and they're always facing decision making fatigue. And it's probably one of the reasons is because they're stuck between what is my mind saying and what is my gut saying, and how do you identify that voice?
Well, if you're walking out of a meeting, it doesn't necessarily have to be an official negotiation. If you walk out of a meeting, you're saying to yourself, God, that son of a, he really got me. If you're angry like that, your gut controlling you. That's not your rational self controlling you anymore. That's your gut saying, do that. And that's happening very often at the negotiating table, where we start to react to the way the other party deals with us.
Right.
And that's gut. What we need to do is we need to turn that reaction into response. And that's the big difference. We as human beings have that ability to respond rather than to react. That's what separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom. We as human beings have that ability to respond. And we can, and that's something that we generally don't do very well. Heck, take a good look at our world today and what we as human beings have done to this world today. With the politics and all of everything else that's going on, because we've been operating with our gut feeling much more than we have with our brain.
Right, and we're seeing that all across. Geopolitically, business-wise as well, the rise of the bully, right? And today's session is all about power dynamics. We're talking about disarming power dynamics. When you're in the room, it could be a very intense commercial negotiation, a business conversation, or just an evening get together with friends. And there can always be the bully in the room, right? And you're trying to just have a very honest conversation, and there's a bully in the room always trying to barge in, butt in, make it all about themselves. When you have a bully in the room, how do you disarm the power dynamics there? I mean, you said it very clearly. We got to be not reacting but responding, but that's easier said than done. So can you actually disarm power dynamics when you're dealing with a bully in the room?
Well, I think here that there's no clear-cut, straightforward answer of how you can deal with the bully in the room. Negotiation skills is a soft skill.
Mhm.
And soft skills, by definition, means that we need to work at behavior. It's not a mathematical 2 + 2 = 4 type of approach that we can use here, but we need to look at it more from that a behavioristic point of view. And that ties into that question here of what are the different core skills that every good negotiator should have in order to deal
Mhm.
with the bully in the room? And if I may, I'd like to jump into those a little bit, because
Sure.
as negotiation is a soft skill, we need to be able to deal with this behaviorism a little bit more. And one of the very important skills, I think one of the most important skills here, is this concept of having a grounded presence. Now, I'm sure all of you have had this situation where you've walked into an office, your office that you work in, and without even having said a word, within the first 10 seconds as you walk into that office, you know, oh boy, the boss is in a bad mood today.
Yeah.
You can feel that in the atmosphere, and you can see it on people's faces. All of this nonverbal messaging is coming at you as you walk into that room, and you recognize that. And that's what's happening here as well when the bully walks into the room, is they take control of that type of situation.
Yeah.
And we need, as persons, first of all, we need to have that grounded presence. We need to be able to stay calm. We need to be able to, and comes into that concept of respond rather than react. We don't react to it.
Mhm.
Stop. We need to think. We need to listen. We need to be mentally clear and mentally with it. So that mental clarity plays a very, very important role when you walk in, when you have that. And that becomes contagious. Other people recognize that as well. Now, one of the aspects that I think is really important is before you walk into a negotiating room, you need to think, what's going on deep down inside in my mind here? Am I nervous? Am I scared? Am I
Right.
unsure? And that's going to be reflected in whatever I do, whatever I say, whatever happens then next.
Mhm.
So with the bully in the room, having that calm presence is extreme. That grounded presence, I think, is extremely important.
Yep.
The second skill is, of course, the ability to listen strategically, to really be able to listen to what's being said.
Mhm.
And that means, once again, this is part of our behaviorism as well. The word listen is just simply the word silent spelt differently. Stop and think about that. The word listen is just simply the word silent spelt differently. And I say that because what we need to be up here in our mind is silent, not jumping to conclusions, not making assumptions when someone else says something. We need to listen very carefully. Active listening, strategic listening is a very important tool that we need to learn as good negotiators. And that can help us deal with that bully in the room as well.
Mhm.
And then a third skill I think that's very important is, of course, our own clarity of intent. Do we know where we're going? Do we have a clear goal in mind for this particular discussion that we're going? And of course, then clarity of communication as well. Do we use lots of uncertain words? I'm kind of like interested, in possibly examining, perhaps a little bit of this area, and then maybe we could, sort of go into that area. That's this wishy-washy language is something that can be very dangerous in a negotiation. Sometimes we need to be a little bit, not quite 100% saying this is exactly the way it is, because we want to have a little bit of room for movement, but we need to be able to deal with language really, really well.
There has to be a plan B, plan C, plan D kind of coming into it. I think what I'm hearing, from what you're saying is, if I could summarize, there is a lot of preparation also that goes into these three core skills you said. Of course, being grounded in presence. Having a grounded presence, listen strategically, and then of course clarity of intent, very clear purpose, intentions, goals, agenda into the conversation. But how important is preparation into this? Even mental preparation, because I've spent the last few years also kind of really taking forward the negotiation skills kind of I would say, core area in terms of what we do at Pact as well, to take that out into the corporate world, into the student world, and talk about preparation. A lot of people, especially in the legal community, we always feel like, okay, listen, I have done this multiple times before, so I know how it's going to pan out. And maybe that's true in terms of the intellectual part of it, like in terms of the law, in terms of the technicalities, the procedures. You know how it's going to happen. Like the law inside out. The procedures inside out. But you're never ready for another person, no matter how you have seen them in a conference or another setup. You can never be ready mentally and emotionally and psychologically for another person. So preparation is important because there could be something that the other person says that could trigger you and completely derail you from your plan. And that's what power dynamics is all about. We're talking about disarming power dynamics. Uh, and how do you not get disarmed yourself? Like, right? Even you might feel on paper as the most as a more, like, I would say, a stronger party or a superior party in the room, but something coming out of the other person's mouth might just trigger you and you suddenly feel powerless in the room. So how important is preparation? I know you already said it, but if you could kind of spend some more time on that, Charlie.
Well, I think this quote sums it up very nicely. Pre, Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And that's something that I think a lot of us don't really take to heart nearly as much as we probably should. I hear from people very, very often, yeah, Charlie, we'll just go into the negotiation, listen to what they say, and we'll react accordingly.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid that is really a very dangerous path to take, because not being prepared properly, not knowing where you want to go, what goal you want to achieve, then any road will get you there. If you don't know where you're going, then any road goes there. And that's where the negotiation can go off in the wrong direction very, very quickly. Preparation, I think, is absolutely key. And preparation, not only with all of the numbers, with the logic, with the data and that kind of thing, but it's also preparation with your emotional aspect as well. Is this person going to try to derail me? Is this person that I'm dealing with across the table, is he or she interested in collaborative negotiation? Or are they going to be very, very strongly with the positional bargaining approach? I'm right, you're wrong. And then we need to recognize that if we're dealing with someone like that, we need to approach it differently than with someone who's a very collaborative approach. And that comes into the whole world of trust and how important trust is in a negotiation as well. And that brings us to a whole new area there if we want to go into the world of trust. But before I touch on that aspect, just the concept of dealing with this bully in the room, dealing with these power dynamics, diffusing these power dynamics, it's a matter of having emotional intelligence.
Yep.
Being aware of that. That means that you need to be able to read the room. You need to be able to look at the people and recognize, hey, this person's on my side, that person's not, this person is unsure, that type of thing. Sometimes you're dealing just one-on-one in a negotiation. Sometimes you have 3, 4, 5 people sitting across the table from you. And being able to react to those kinds of situations. The person who just looks at you.
Yeah.
And doesn't say anything. That makes you feel really uncomfortable. And you need to be able to deal with that kind of situation as well. The power of silence is a fantastic tool that good negotiators need to be able to use as well.
What about sense of humor? You need sense of humor to break someone like that down. I do that when I feel like I can't deal with the silence.
Yeah, absolutely. So being able to deal with that, detecting relationships, understanding trust and the development of trust, adapting approaches, given those kinds of situations as well. And then, of course, the whole world of framing, being able to frame the situation in different frames so that people can understand where you're coming from, what you're talking about. And that's a real good tool that I think all good negotiators need to have, is being able to reframe a particular situation, present it in a little bit different light. Okay, so I think that's a very, very important soft skill that is absolutely essential as a negotiator to have. And then, of course, the whole world of collaborative problem solving. Because once again, any negotiation has got two sides to it. The question is, are we trying to solve a problem together, or are you just trying to take advantage of me? And that brings us to that so-called negotiator's dilemma that all of us as negotiators face. All of us as negotiators face this dilemma. Do I cooperate to help achieve a common goal, or do I compete to increase my own? And that's this whole
especially when you feel the working of the power in the room, right? You feel there's someone else who's pushing. There is a bit of a personality clash. There is a bit of that power struggle there, where you feel like the other person is trying to put their stamp onto the conversation, be the only voice there, making the conversation happen. They have 90% of the airtime, right? You're not allowed to actually even say anything in the room. However, all the solutions coming in are good ones. All the options coming in, all these suggestions are good ones. The person is saying all the right things. There's nothing wrong with it. But you hardly had a chance to say anything. And so you're thinking, should I actually do this deal or should I? We talk about reactive devaluation, right, in the negotiation space. I'm only going to say no to you because I've not had a say in it. Like, everything you're saying is great. I'm going to agree to it. It's looking all good on paper. In fact, it's matching my interest. I had similar ideas, so it's good. But I feel like it's all coming from you, and there's that power struggle there. Maybe it's the language you're using, the vocabulary, your body language in the room, and it's so kind of pulling you down. That I've seen that happen in mediations, where one party is actually giving out good ideas, the other party is just block themselves off, just sitting with their arms folded, and I'm wondering why. That seems like so. It's actually matching your interest. Why would you be so closed off against it? Right. So why is it we spent quite some time talking about dealing with someone who is the stronger party in the room and how you disarm that. But if I can quickly just digress here, how do we make sure that we are not that? How do we make sure that we are not the ones trampling on that autonomy and that control? Because you want to have sharing of control in a good negotiation, a bit of a sharing of control, so that the other party is with you and doesn't feel like they're being overpowered all the time. So from a power dynamics possible, how do we make sure we are not kind of making it an uncomfortable situation for someone else?
Well, I think here, once again, we need to recognize that power is not equally distributed amongst the parties.
Okay.
One party is going to be stronger. The other party is going to be weaker, at least perceived weakness, perceived strength. And that's a fact of life. That sometimes when you walk in and you want a pay rise, and your boss is in the stronger position. They say yes or no. They can say no. You can bring in all sorts of different arguments as to why you should get a higher pay rise, but they're the one who has the power of saying yes or no to it, right? And there's no way. You can't say, wait a minute, that's not fair. There's no such thing as fairness per se. Fairness is something that is very relative to our own situation as well here. And this whole concept that we sometimes use, that's not a fair offer. That that argument, that's not a fair offer. It's a worthless statement that doesn't help at all in a negotiation. Because that's this concept of power once again. What we need to do is we need to disarm this power tactic here. Think about it from a collaborative point of view, for example. So without necessarily becoming confrontational or aggressive or that kind of thing, it's somewhat difficult to do. Because we need to recognize that power is situational. When we mean by situation, we're talking about it changes based on the particular context that we're in. Power is also relational. So it depends on the relationship between you and the other party. And that is a whole concept of trust, for example, as well. Do I trust the other party? Completely different scenario than if I don't trust the other party. If I walk into negotiation, I have no trust for that other person. He's burnt me twice already. Or I've been in a similar situation. That's even worse, where I've been in a similar situation with someone else and I got burned. And I carry that whole fear with me into this particular situation. And that's a dangerous thing to do. And that's where, once again, emotional intelligence, understanding I'm still grounded. That situation over there that I had before has nothing to do with this situation. But my gut says it does. And so therefore I'm going to be extra careful because I do not want to get burned again. And that's, once again, this concept of the own power within ourselves. We're the ones who are disarming ourselves sometimes too much through fear. And that fear of being taken advantage of underscores just about every single negotiation. And we need to be able to learn to deal with that fear. And sometimes it's something that happened to us in the past with similar situations, or it's something that someone told us that we get scared about that might possibly happen. Our boss says, if you do not succeed at this negotiation, you're going to be fired.
Right.
That's a major fear aspect there as well. So you go in with a different attitude than a boss who says, hey, try to make the best out of this. I know it's going to be difficult, but we will get through it no matter what you do. I've got your back.
Yeah. Without a target on your head.
Yeah, exactly.
We always love it when a podcast turns into a masterclass. Charlie is really, really kicking it in right now. If you're joining us live on LinkedIn or YouTube, please do say hi. If you've got a question for Charlie on negotiation, drop it in the LinkedIn comments and we'll pick it up. This is the Mission Mediation Podcast. We have Charlie LaFond joining us live from LaFond Training. Charlie, I want to take a step back, if you don't mind. I want to go back to your early days. You've been teaching negotiation for over 3 decades now, maybe close to 4 decades. But where did it all start? What inspired you to get into this space? Who did you look up to? And who were your mentors? Let's rewind the clock for a while.
Boy, let's go back to the very beginning there, rewinding the clock a little bit. Negotiation, I approach negotiation probably the way most other people that are on this podcast, that are listening to me here, who are in the real world, we negotiate by the seat of our pants. We walk into a room, we try it out. We watch how someone else does it, and we do it. Now, imagine if you wanted to learn how to swim, and you just go into the ocean and you just start swimming. You have no formal training, nothing at all. You just simply throw yourself into the water. Chances are you have a hard time learning how to swim. Yeah. And that's the thing that I think most of us need to recognize is that, we can swim. We can do the dog paddle. We can keep our head above water. But are we swimming very effectively? Not really. We're wasting a lot of energy, a lot of time, and we're not getting very far very fast.
And it doesn't look pleasant either.
No, and it doesn't look pleasant either. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and that's exactly what's happening with most of us in the negotiating world as well. We walk in, and for example, especially those of us who are studying law, lawyers think they know how to negotiate because they are experts at the law. And I think that's a big, big mistake. Because I think here that law teaches us from the very beginning how to defend, how to prove our point. I am right, you are wrong. But in negotiations, that's the first step to a conflict and creating conflict. That's a great way to create conflict. You're wrong, Jonathan. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. And boy, how do you feel about that? You go, no, yes, I do. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I've been doing this for 30 years. And there you've got this conflict rising up immediately. And this is something that I think good lawyers will also take the time to learn how to negotiate properly. They will take trainings. They will learn, just like you go to swimming class to learn how to swim. Good negotiators go to negotiation classes to learn how to negotiate properly. And that's where we get into that world of what really makes us tick. Well, this book, Getting to Yes by Fisher and Uri, this I think is like the Bible. And I remember reading this back in graduate school when I was in graduate school and thinking, wow, this has got a lot of interesting stuff in it.
Yep.
And that was perhaps the one thing that really got me interested in the world of negotiation, and understanding as well that it's not only the math, it's not only solving, working out the strategy and that kind of thing, but it's also understanding how people tick. The emotional quotient aspect, as I was talking about, the IQ aspect is really important here as well. And that got me really interested in that. The soft skill, being able to communicate more effectively, understanding, first of all, what is my message, and then trying to get that message across. And that's where it also got me very much involved in my second area of speciality, and that's presenting and using presentation skills as a way of getting ideas across to other people. And communication is an essential tool in the world of negotiation. Very often, when we don't have a very high trust with another party in the negotiating table, if trust is relatively low, then we pick up on dichotomy of what person is saying, the words that the person is saying, and what's the facial expression? What are the gestures? What's the body language saying? Oh, I'm really happy to be here. And the body is saying, I don't want to be here. And this dichotomy, this incongruency that exists, we pick up on as human beings extremely subtly. We pick it up very, very clearly as well. So even subtle movements that say, this person really doesn't want to be here, this person is, then we don't trust that person anymore. And that's an important negotiation skill to be able to have. And that got me really interested in that. So I realized being self-taught is not really great. I need to learn more about this. I need to understand how this goes. Got training in negotiation skills, found out that I really enjoy teaching it as well. And that ties in very closely as well with the world of mediation too. And negotiation and mediation, I think, are two wonderful areas that can really help solve problems. As soon as we move into the area of arbitration and litigation, we're just trying to decide who's right and who's wrong. The relationship doesn't play a part anymore. And that's where there's a big line between the world of negotiation and mediation and the world of arbitration and litigation.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's necessary to go that far, but I think a lot of problems could have been solved a lot earlier if we hadn't just gone directly into arbitration or litigation.
And this comes back to that point you were making, Charlie, about, a lot of lawyers think that they are good negotiators.
Yeah.
And they kind of shy away, or sometimes I would say even trivialize focus on emotional intelligence. They think it's not that important. And that's because they feel like negotiation is equal to, they might be really good mooters, because as a lawyer, you're trained to be a mooter, right? You moot all the time. And so you might be good at mooting, but that doesn't mean that you're good at negotiating, because negotiating is more than just the technicalities and the legal aspects of the subject matter you're dealing with, right? Sometimes when we go to these mediation competitions, and even in real life mediations, I remember a situation a couple of years ago where one of the lawyers representing the party said in the opening statement, "I'm ready with my arguments." And I said, I'm sorry, we might want to reframe that because we spoke about this yesterday. And I said that we want to replace every he was rehearsing. He was a very he was a nice person. He was ready. He was trying to prepare for his mediation. He said, "Should I change my language?" And I said, "Yeah, might want to change arguments to like presentation. That's a better
Yeah.
word. It's more open ended. But I guess he missed out somewhere, and he's like, "I'm ready with my arguments." And I said, I had to stop him right away. So that's the thing. I mean, it seems like a very trivial anecdote, but most people think that negotiations is arguments. It's just that in this case, hopefully we'll find a compromise and we'll settle. For a lot
Yeah.
of people, negotiation means compromise. You want A, I want B, we'll compromise and settle for C. But not everyone is ready to hustle. A lot of people who I work with now, I say negotiation is a hustle. It's hard work. Compromise is easy, where you want A and I want B and we'll settle for C. Okay, that's easy. That can be done like in 30 seconds. But negotiation is that, we got to push and pull. There's going to be yeses and nos. How do you deal with my nose and how do I deal with your nose? And that's hard work. And a lot of people are not willing to do that hard work. And coming back to our topic of power dynamics, and thank you for sharing that inspiration, Charlie, of how it started out for you. But circling back to this topic of disarming power dynamics, a lot of people, will just come out of a negotiation completely frustrated, upset, angry, and say things like, "That's a very difficult person," or "That's a completely obnoxious person," or that person's arrogant, or "That person is." I'm not going to swear on live podcast, but I'm just saying that it's always them. It's always what's wrong with them, and I'm not
Yeah.
saying that their behavior is ideal for a negotiation. I'm not saying that, but the question is, and I always try and engage in a bit of self-reflection, even though it's dangerous to my job as being a neutral. I just engage in a bit of self-reflection and say, what could you have done differently to deal with that kind of behavior?
Mhm.
They are what they are. That's fine. But what could you have done differently? How could you have disarmed that situation? So I think it's that's a very which takes me back to this point about the psychology of power, and you touched upon it a bit there. How does it start to affect us when we expect people to behave the way we behave in a negotiation, and when they don't, we get upset and angry and disappointed with that whole situation, and we're not ready to put in the hard yards
Yeah.
to actually disarm that power dynamic. We expect them to be on the same level field with us. What are your thoughts on that? Sorry for
Yeah.
rambling on.
No, I think this concept of we expect them to be at the same level as we are at is a dangerous one as well. That's the
Right.
whole world of assumptions. Oops, sorry. This whole world of assumptions that we make. We assume that they are at this area, or they've got this particular problem or that particular problem. We as human beings and our mind literally is designed to operate with assumptions.
Mhm.
The mind is designed around this concept of it doesn't have enough information, so it needs to make assumptions in order to move forward. Otherwise, imagine that even if you were walking down the street, if you had to think about every single thing consciously, all of the traffic that's going on and things like that, the mind is making certain assumptions about how you walk, about how you move, so that your conscious mind can operate at a much better level. And that's why you're walking without thinking about it.
Mhm.
This is the unconscious aspect of our mind. And that's making assumptions. You put one foot in front of the other and it's making those assumptions. If all of a sudden stairs come along and your mind is off in a different world thinking about a problem, and all of a sudden these stairs, and then you end up falling down the stairs because your unconscious mind, the habit of walking, wasn't expecting the stairs. So boom, you have an accident there. But our mind deals with unconscious scenarios, and our mind is highly adept at dealing with assumptions. And that's the problem when we get into negotiations. We automatically start making assumptions about the other party, about the situation, about what's going to happen next. And these assumptions are very, very dangerous. So we need to fight against the way our brain literally is hardwired a little bit here in a negotiation. That's a lot of work. One of the key ways of getting around that is just simply asking more questions in a negotiation. And that's one thing that I've experienced time and again in all of the classes all of the different scenarios that I've worked with students, is the number of questions that are asked in a negotiation are relatively few, very few. Many more strong statements are made. This is the way it's going to be, rather than how do you see the particular situation? What aspects could we do differently here? And then when we do get into the world of questions, most of the questions that are asked in a negotiation are closed questions, yes, no questions. Do you agree? That kind of thing. Now, one of the key elements, and Richard Nixon said that asking questions, trying to find information gathering is the mother's milk of a negotiation. So trying to gather information is extremely important. And that's one of the areas where we make a lot of assumptions much, much too early, much, much too quickly. I assume I know what they're talking about. I know what the situation is. And these assumptions are very, very deadly. And I'd really highly recommend that we need to spend more time gathering information at the beginning of the negotiation, especially at the beginning phase, but throughout the entire negotiation, asking proper questions. And that brings me to the point here. What's the difference between an open question and a closed question? An open question is a what question, a who, what, when, where, why, how. And the closed question is a yes or no answer question. Yes or no questions, closed questions, they're called closed questions because they literally close the discussion down. That's why they're called closed questions. So therefore you have, do you agree? Yes, no. Close the answer that closes the discussion down. Whereas the open questions are the questions that open the discussion up. What do you think about this idea? Where do you think we could go from here? What is the next step that we need to take together? And those types of open questions explore the options. They explore the interests. A yes-no question does not explore interests. And I've noticed very often in my experience is we tend, when we do ask questions, to take the easy way out and ask the yes-no question. The yes-no question in a negotiation is fantastic. It belongs in the negotiation for the close. Do you agree? Have we got a deal? That's absolutely essential. You need to have that close in a negotiation as well. But it doesn't belong in the beginning of the negotiation. There you need more of the open questions. Try to explore a little bit more. Share information as well. And a good negotiator will give in order to get. And how often have we heard that phrase? And I know it exists in many different languages. In fact, I think it exists in all of the languages around the world. You've got to give in order to get. How often have you heard it the other way around? You've got to get in order to give. Almost never. But for some reason, as soon as we walk down and as we sit down at the negotiating table, that's what we expect. You've got to give me first before I give you anything. I've got to get as much as I can, then I'll give you a little bit in return. And that's
it's I guess once again it comes down to such it comes down to such simple things at the end of the day, and everything you're saying, Charlie, almost feels like I've been saying this for years, and now I know where I picked this up from you when we met almost a decade ago. It's stuck in me, right? There you go. I've been a good pupil. I've been taking your teachings to the world. So, but once again, I was just thinking while you were speaking, open-ended questions. What a great technique, harmless technique. Almost a bit passive aggressive, I would say, if you want to use it that way to disarm a bully in the room. Someone's pounding down with questions and behavior, or is just being distant and aloof, not responding. Maybe, as you said, a silent person just sitting in a room. An open-ended question could open that person up,
absolutely.
right? Or if someone's being very rude to you, you could just respond with an open-ended question, and they won't know what to do about it.
Hmm.
I think it's a great tool. It's a harmless tool. It's a non-violent tool in many ways
Very,
to
yeah.
de-escalate as well. To
I think
de-escalate the
when you've got a bully in the room, there are four different tactics that you can use. That's one of them. Asking
Mhm,
questions, asking strategic questions, good
mhm.
questions, high quality questions. And that means you need to think a little bit before you open up your mouth as well.
Yep.
But a second strategy, if you've got a bully in the room, is to just simply slow the whole situation down a little bit. Because powerful people like to move really quickly. That's part
Yes.
of the thing. And if you watch, the story about the CEO that has his assistant walking with him, and or her, and the CEO is walking very very fast, and the assistant is trying to keep up to the CEO, and the CEO isn't even aware of this, that they're walking
Yeah.
quickly, but that's because they're powerful. They have the energy, and power creates energy. There's no question about that.
Mhm.
And so the CEO walks very fast. And if you want to try to slow things down a little bit, you've got that option as well as a negotiator to try to slow things down, make it a little
Yeah.
bit calmer, slow that conversation down. And that can help considerably in removing or disarming some of that power that the person is portraying by trying to move quickly. So just wait a minute. That's a very interesting offer that you made there. Let's just explore the options a little bit more closely here before we make a decision. So when you said, and then you go in, and once again, this is a matter of asking questions then, and that ties into
Mhm.
the question asking aspect there. The third area that you can help to disarm someone is just simply reframing a particular situation
Yeah.
and turning it into a shared problem rather than looking at their problem and my problem. Reframing it as how is this going to solve our problem together? And that's another aspect that needs a little bit of practice, a little bit of thought. Once again, it's a rhetorical skill, it's a soft skill that needs to be practiced. It's not something, it's a behavioral aspect. It's not something that you can just immediately change from one day to the next. It means reshaping your thinking a little bit as well here. And that's what good negotiators do. And you said that you reflect from time to time. That's an important skill, a very important skill that all of us need to do. We need to be able to sit back after a negotiation and not just simply celebrate when it was a success or be disenchanted when it was a failure, but to start to analyze why. Why was this a success? What did we do well? How could we have done it even differently? And to reflect on that a little bit. And that's something that I try to get all of my negotiation students to do as well, is after the negotiation to stop and sit down and reflect. What were the things that I really liked about this? What were the things that I
Mhm.
didn't that much about my situation, about the other party as well? Right. And then, of
Charlie,
course, yep.
sorry, did we finish the fourth one? So it was reframing and reflecting was
Yeah.
the fourth one?
That was the third one, the
Oh,
reframing.
sorry. I'll
The
let you
fourth one
complete that.
is just simply looking at information from a different perspective, bringing in
Yeah.
new information, and that's the insight, looking at it from a different
Mhm.
perspective, and trying to bring it out that way as well. So that's if you're the weaker party, if you've got a bully in the room type of situation.
Yeah, and especially on the reflecting bit, I think, and also the reframing bit, these are skills that are quite spoken about in the business and law school world. But I'm going to make a controversial point here, especially, and maybe Gen Alpha won't like what I'm saying, but for Gen Alpha, some of their closest friends are devices, technology, whether it's their smartphones or their laptops, and now you have artificial intelligence. They have a problem, they run up to Chat GPT or Claude or whoever else is out there. I'm like, how do we deal with this? Jonathan's being a bit rude. How do I deal with Jonathan? Charlie is being a bit aggressive in the workplace. How do I deal with Charlie? So, and then there's someone giving them advice, and then they're trying to execute that. This is happening for real, Charlie. So, what
Oh
I'm
yeah.
saying is, in this world that we live in now, you know, growing up, we had to deal with conflict on the football ground, or in church, or in practice, in theater practice, or in just in a neighborhood while we were dealing with the festival preparation. There was always something that we were doing. We were always socially involved in situations which made us get into these conflicting zones, and we had to find our way out of it. But today, everyone's a typewriter, a keyboard warrior, as you call them. So they're not
Yeah.
really ready for the negotiation world, and power dynamics hits them hard in the real world. So what's your view on this? And this is my last question to you before I bring in the next generation or live on the podcast.
Okay. Well, I think that we need to recognize that AI is a tool. It's not a crutch. We need to be able to use AI as a tool to help us. There's no question about that. To ignore it, I think, would be the biggest mistake ever. We need to take advantage of what AI offers. There's absolutely no question about that. But we need to recognize as well that AI is not an interpersonal tool, an interpersonal skill. It's a tool. It's not a skill. We need to learn that skill. And that's why going into training is even more important now for all of this, the newer generations entering the world of negotiation. They need to train themselves even more so in these interpersonal skills, being able to read emotion. AI can never read emotion that way. They can't read the room. We need to learn how to do that more. We need to learn how to manage our own anxieties a little bit more. What are we scared of, and why are we scared? The whole idea of being able to respond rather than react. And let's face it, AI is still just simply an algorithm. It just simply looks at how much, what word follows this word most of the time. It's not logical. It's just simply computational. And we need to recognize that. And let's face it, the interpersonal aspect in a negotiation is very much relational and not computational. So AI can become a very good tool. It's a proxy. It's a very good tool, but it can't become a proxy. It can't become a replacement. We can practice with AI. There's no question about that. We can ask it all sorts of different questions there to help me practice responding to a angry person. Right? You can use it that way. Or, for example, role play a difficult situation with my colleague and create a role play. But we need to build good prompts to do that. Right. We need to think through the situation as well there. Help me understand how my tone comes across with someone else. And I can type in or I can speak it in, because now you can use microphones as well for that.
Yeah.
AI can help you give you feedback on those kinds of things, but they cannot replace you that way. At least not yet. What 20 years, 30 years down the road is going to bring us, only God knows there. But still, we're not. AI does not include emotion in its makeup,
Right.
And the emotion is what's most important at the negotiating table. This interpersonal skills, and that's why we do still negotiate with our gut, not just simply our brain. And AI can never replace that. Learning how to control our gut, making all of our butterflies fly in formation is what's really key there. And that means using these abilities of emotional intelligence, of collaborative problem solving, of the strategic listening, asking good questions, and that kind of thing. All of those are the types of things that are very important for us. So
Brilliant.
AI, wonderful tool, but not a crutch, not a replacement.
You heard it here on the Mission Mediation podcast. Charlie LaFond very clearly saying it is a very important tool that can help you, train and coach yourself for difficult situations. But at the end of the day, reading the room is a very human thing, and that is something that we will have to put ourselves through the drills, put ourselves through the paces, and learn through mistakes. But I like how much you have stressed today, Charlie, on self-reflection, on reflective practice. There are professionals who can help us with that, but there's also, being a good negotiator, you should be able to do that. So I had a Jesuit upbringing, and we did something called as being contemplative in action, where you would actually reflect on the day and how you actually communicated with people for the whole day. And it helped you kind of reflect on what was your style of approaching people and situations and conflict. But I won't digress. I want to bring in a couple of next generation lawyers from India to the stage. They've got questions for you. They've been sitting patiently listening to you, and I want to bring them in so that they have a chance to share with you what they think about everything they've heard today. Akshita, Rishi, the stage is yours.
Hi, Charlie. I'm Arushi, and I'm a law student. I'm in my fourth year currently, studying in Himachal Pradesh National Law University. I think you beautifully talked about each and every aspect. Particularly, I really liked that information gathering part, and I truly agree with that because, especially where power imbalance exists, information actually becomes a form of currency. But Charlie, am curious, and I just want to ask as to how do you distinguish between gathering information just to know the other party genuinely, or when you have to gather information to strategically influence them? Like, where does that line sit in actual practice?
Well, I think that we've got two different aspects there in the information gathering phase, and one is away from the table, and the other one is at the table. We have to do our homework, and that's part of this whole world of preparation. We need to do our homework. We need to try to find out as much as we can about the party sitting across the table from us, about their position, about their interests, and about their desires. And we need to try to think that through ahead of time. Gathering that kind of information is not easy, but it is essential. And then when we get into the negotiation itself, then we've got the situation where we need to then verify that information, the assumptions that we've made. And this is where assumption is part of negotiation, yes, but we need to recognize that we are assuming and then verify that. Because I think the concept of assumptions is one that can be very, very dangerous. So part of this information gathering is also clarifying or checking the assumptions that we've made in our preparation phase. And then, of course, as new information comes in, we need to be able to think holistically. We need to be able to keep that big picture as well. And that's a real challenge that sometimes information is presented to us not quite the way that it really is. Sometimes the other party tends to create a little bit more smoke or fog or distraction in that area to draw away the interest from another area. And we need to recognize that as well. So information gathering and information assessing, I think is absolutely key there. And it's done away from the table, at the table, and it's very dynamic.
Right. Totally getting it.
Okay.
Hi, Charlie. I'm Akshita. I am a final year student at National Law University, Shimla, and right about to dive into the legal industry. So I have to thank one of our friends, as Jonathan quoted, the technology, for the ability to have this conversation and pick your brain with regards to a question that I have. This has just been a masterful articulation of understanding things that are not really present in case files when we, as young lawyers, go into a mediation or a negotiation room. And I've been quite fascinated with mediation. But there's a question that pops up here. We have, as law students, always understood that a mediator has to be neutral. So, in mediation rooms, is our responsibility to neutralize power completely so that everybody is equal? Or is it just to help the underdog as opposition to the bully to effectively navigate that power dynamic? And if that is so, Charlie, where does the question of neutrality come off as a trade off here?
You know, keywords here: neutrality, dynamics of power, and mediator, and impartiality. Impartiality and neutrality are not necessarily the same thing. And I think being impartial to what one party says or the other party says, that's your job as a mediator, to remain impartial. That means no judgment. is brought across. One party in the room is going to have more power than the other party. Your job as mediator is not necessarily to try to disarm all of that power. Your job is to get the people to try to solve the problem together. And that's the job of the mediator. You don't care about what the other party has, what power the other party has or doesn't have. That's not part of your job as mediator. You can't change that power aspect very well, but you can try to reduce that power dynamic or readjust that power dynamic a bit through things like asking questions, trying to make sure that all of the different points are clear, that the assumptions are being are quite clearly understood, that there aren't any unclear assumptions, that kind of thing. So your job as a mediator is to make sure that both parties understand each other and their situations. But you can't come in and create neutral situations. That's not going to happen. I don't think so. Does that help you there?
Thank you so much, Charlie. Yes, absolutely. And I was completely mind-boggled by the translation of listen and silent. I mean, that is right in front of our eyes, but we don't often look at it that way. So thank you for that.
Yeah. My pleasure. Great.
Awesome. Rishi, Akshita, I'm sure you have a lot of questions like everyone else who has joined us today, but you can hit up Charlie on LinkedIn, of course, connect with him there. And of course, I'll drop in his email address as well with you. You can always write to him. Charlie, a visit to India is due very soon. Maybe Himachal, you never know. When the snow starts to melt. Yeah, we should find a way to bring you back to India. It's been a while. And host you again here. I'm sure you miss the food. But one last question, for before we wrap up, a quick fire one, to wrap up power dynamics and disarming power dynamics. What you've tried everything, like you've given it your best, you have listened in, you've been silent, you've asked open-ended questions, you've been grounded, you've been, you've tried to, dig into that emotional intelligence that you have so far, worked hard towards gaining, and it's just not working out. And the other person just being a very aggressive person in the room, or just not interested in the conversation. And maybe I'm doing this a favor for the next generation of law students getting into their law professions. They'll be dealing with different kinds of bosses. And so, how do you deal with that? What's your plan Z, Charlie?
That's what I was just going to say. It's time to take advantage of your BATNA. And BATNA stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement, which means it's time to go for Plan B. If everything else fails, you've tried everything and it's still not working, time to move on to your Plan B. And you should have a Plan B. Take another job, get a different boss. That's
simple.
Life isn't fair, but it still can be a lot of fun.
I like that. It isn't fair, but it can be fun. There you go. We should end it on that note. That's a mic drop statement. Ladies and gentlemen, Charlie LaFond joining us all the way from Vienna on episode 2 of season 2 of the Mission Mediation podcast. You can watch all episodes on our YouTube channel. That's Mission Mediation by Pact. Please do join us on the next ones. Rishi, Akshita, thank you for those insightful questions. And Charlie, once again, thank you for joining us. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.